But all these, along with all the other principles of Starbucks and Howard Schultz, have been reflected in many of the components of the journey that Starbucks has gone through in the last many, many decades, since 1971. Be it from the point of launching Pie Place Roast, all the way to the launching of the VIA, which supposedly stands for Valencia, if I'm not mistaken, Howard. All these are very, very interesting points in an illustration called Onward. And when I talk about Onward, when Mr. Schultz talks about Onward, I think it is so reflective of where Indonesia must be and must go. This is a country with $1 trillion worth of GDP, or economic pie, that is determined, destined to go with a purpose that's positive for Indonesia and Indonesians. And I think it's only going to go up only if we believe in the story, only if we invest in what's right for us today and what's right for us tomorrow and the days after. As such, I'm so pleased to be associated with this event that's co-hosted by both the Chamber of Commerce, or Kadin, and Apindo, along all the stakeholders of those two associations. As co-host, I'm so pleased and honored to welcome Mr. Howard Schultz. Thank you very much.
First of all, Gita, many people have introduced me over the years, but it's clear that you really did your homework and kind of got underneath the hood of Starbucks. And thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much. Honored guests, our partner, VP Sharma, Chamber of Commerce. It really is an honor and a privilege for me to be here this morning. Gita talked a little bit about the values of Starbucks. I just want to spend a few minutes talking about where those values came from. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. My parents were uneducated, what would be called in America blue-collar workers, and we lived in federally subsidized housing, known as government housing, the projects. My father never made more than $20,000 a year, and when I was 7 years old, a life-changing event took place. I came into my apartment, and my father was laid up on the couch with a cast from his waist to his ankle. The job he had when I was 7 years old was an awful job. He was a truck driver delivering and picking up cloth diapers before the invention of Pampers. And on this one winter month in 1960, he fell on a sheet of ice and broke his hip and ankle. In 1960 in America, if you were a blue-collar or an uneducated worker, more often than not, you were dismissed with no health insurance, no workman's compensation, and that's what happened to my family. And I witnessed at the age of 7 the fracturing of the American dream. I saw firsthand what could happen to a family when there was no hope and there was really tough times. I didn't know at the age of 7 that that event would shape my life, and I never dreamed at the age of 7 that one day I'd be building and running a company with 230,000 employees in 62 countries. But what I did know is that that event scarred me. And I can feel the scars today. I felt the shame, the insecurity, and the vulnerability of living on the other side of the tracks and not having access to many things that other people had. In 1987, Starbucks had 11 stores and 100 employees, and we had a dream to create a national brand in America. around coffee. But that dream and aspiration was coupled with a parallel track to build a different kind of company. Not a company that's better than any other enterprise, but a little bit different. First and foremost, we said we want to build a business that would balance profitability and benevolence. So in 1989, Starbucks became the first company in America to provide comprehensive health insurance to every single employee and equity in the form of stock options, again to every single employee. And the novelty of that, this was the first time in the history of American business where those benefits went to part-time workers. In essence, what I was trying to do in the early part of the company, the imprinting stage of the company, was build the kind of company that my father never got a chance to work for. If I fast forward to 1992, Starbucks went public with 125 stores, and we thought we'd hit the lottery. The market cap of the company in 1992 was $250 million. It was beyond our wildest dreams. For basically 20 consecutive years, we were on a wild carpet ride in which everything we did, everything we touched, every product, every city, every new country, almost everything seemed to work. In 2002, I stepped down as the CEO and became the chairman. And for the next few years, everything was fine. And then something terrible happened. What happened was that the success of the company and the growth of the company began to cover up significant mistakes. And a disease, something carcinogenic, somehow seeped into the enterprise. And that disease was hubris, entitlement. And all of a sudden, the invincibility of Starbucks began to demonstrate cracks. At the same time, the United States and the rest of the world was going to begin entering into a cataclysmic financial crisis. So the recession on a global level and self-induced mistakes created a situation in which Starbucks almost lost its way and almost lost the entire company. Now, even though I was not the CEO during that period, I must share with you that I was responsible as anyone else. I was not paying close attention, and as the chairman of the company, I was as responsible as anyone else for the demise of Starbucks. When I returned in 2008, we had to transform Starbucks Coffee Company. And we created a transformational agenda in order to do that. Now, when I came back in January of 2008 and began to ask questions and talk to people, I would say honestly, with great transparency, almost every question I asked and every rock I turned over, the situation was worse than I possibly could have believed. So much so that the media and Wall Street and everyone engaged in kind of reviewing the future of Starbucks had concluded that the bloom was off the rose, that Starbucks' best days were over. And how could the board possibly bring back Howard Schultz to fix the company when he was the problem to begin with? I still have many of these headlines in a desk drawer as proof that many people did not know what they were talking about because they undervalued the essence of the initial success of the company and the enduring quality of Starbucks. What is the enduring quality of Starbucks? What is the key to the success of the company then, today, and in the future? I gave a talk yesterday to about 600 Starbucks employees who we call partners. And I said to them that there's two words that come to my mind when I think of Starbucks. And those two words are not in any business textbook and certainly not taught in any business class. It's love and humanity. Now, what does that have to do with business? Whether we are doing business in Seattle, Washington, or the 62 countries that we're doing business in, or the 147 stores here in Indonesia, there is a common thread to the success that we've enjoyed, and I would submit a common thread to almost any business that's represented here today. And that is the reservoir of trust. We're living at a time in the world today where there is such a fracturing of trust and confidence in almost everything that our parents' generation taught us to believe in. The U.S. Congress, as an example, has an 11% approval rate. 11%. I suspect that's family and friends. The banks in the U.S., corporations around the world, all these things have been met with great cynicism and skepticism. So when I came back in 2008, the question was, how can we restore the trust and confidence with our people and with our customers and the market? I stood up in front of the entire company the first week I came back, and I cried. I cried in front of them because I had to apologize to them because as leaders, we had let them and their families down. But I promised them that if they could meet me halfway, we would restore the glory of the company. The questions I began to ask, the problems that we uncovered, were so bad that we had to do something that was an anathema to the company. And that was, we announced to everyone in America that we were going to close all of the U.S. stores for an entire day to retrain our staff. And we were going to retrain them, believe it or not, on making coffee. How could a coffee company that had been in business for 40 years forget how to make coffee? Let me tell you why. Because in the years that followed or preceded, the management of the company began to measure and reward the wrong things. They began to measure and reward profit, yield, speed of service, and anything that would add flavor to the bottom line. All the shortcuts that were put in place began to eradicate the 40-year history of the company. So when we announced to the world that we were going to retrain our people on brewing coffee, you would have thought that the media circus surrounding that was going to create such havoc for the company. But what it did, it galvanized 200,000 people about the honesty and transparency that we would have internally to admit our mistakes. A month later, I asked members of our senior team, how can we get the most important person within Starbucks to one place? In effect, how can we bring 10,000 store managers to one meeting? How can we get in front of the people who are the most important? Now, this was a time in America where almost every company had shut down travel because of the crisis. We invited municipalities into Seattle to pitch us as to why we should come to their city. Many cities came, and one day we met the Chamber of Commerce from the city of New Orleans, and they had us at hello. They told us about the fracturing of their city as a result of the Katrina catastrophe. They told us about all the people being left behind in New Orleans, and we decided to bring 10,000 people to New Orleans at a cost of $30 million to host a meeting. And we decided before we would host 1 hour of that meeting, we would have an event for a day and a half of contributing 50,000 hours of community service in the 9th Ward, which was a part of America that none of us could possibly believe existed. It looked like the third world. And yet it was the USA. We contributed the 50,000 hours of community service, gave back to the community, demonstrated our conscience to that city, and then we had the meeting. After 2 days of the meeting, I had to get up in front of 10,000 people and give a $30 million speech. A day or two before, I showed some of my colleagues the outline of what I was going to talk about. And they said, Howard, if you share this information with 10,000 store managers, you're going to scare the hell out of them. You can't possibly tell them how bad things are. It's a real question of leadership, of what happens in a crisis. And make no mistake about it, we were fighting for our life. And the question was, how honest should we be with our people? Not only when things are going well, but when there's real problems. And I decided very easily we had to trust our people. And I shared with them chapter and verse, without any compromise, how bad the situation was. And the fact was that if it continued, we may not make it. And I asked them to do two things with it. The first thing I talked about is, what does it mean to be personally accountable for our actions? 70 million people this week will go through Starbucks stores. We are the most visited, frequented retailer in America. If you're a store manager and you're dealing with 500 or 1,000 customers a day, the easiest thing to believe is that if you don't give good service to 1 or 2 people, what does it matter? Big deal. And the truth is, when you're building a company, and when you're creating a company that will endure, or you're building a country or an economy, everything matters. Everything matters. And I had to convey to every store manager, as leaders of their store and of their people and of their customer base, the equity of the Starbucks brand was their relationship with one another and a relationship with the customer. And we could no longer afford to have one customer walk into the store and not have their expectations met and hopefully exceeded. But here's the thing. As leaders, as managers, as entrepreneurs, you cannot exceed the expectations of your customers unless, as managers and leaders, we are exceeding the expectations of our own people. So the accountability was not only to exceed the expectations of our customers, but to do it in a way in which we are celebrating the relationship we have with our people. To say it another way, we were putting in place the opportunity for Starbucks to drive towards performance, but only through the lens of humanity. This is a really key aspect of the turnaround of Starbucks. How do you create significant financial performance through the lens of humanity? The second thing was asking our people to understand the concept of what it means not to be a bystander. We all see things every single day, at work, in our house, with friends, with family, with colleagues, that perhaps, especially in a business context, are not the standards of excellence. Now, I described yesterday, for 600 Starbucks employees, my view of excellence and greatness versus mediocrity. Starbucks Coffee Company is not in the business of doing anything mediocre. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. But it's not what we do, it's why we do it. And I said yesterday, not because I'm in Indonesia, that if you want to understand what greatness is and what excellence is, sit quietly with a French press of some of the best coffee in the world that just happens to come from Sumatra. True. It will not let you down, 100% of the time. Measure your actions and the consistencies of your efforts against that cup of coffee. But as a manager and a leader of a store, of an enterprise, of anything to do with our business or yours, if you see things that are inconsistent with your own standards, with the standards of quality, greatness, and excellence, and you let it go, then, ladies and gentlemen, not only are you a bystander, but you are contributing to the mediocrity of the enterprise. And let me say it another way. Every time you hire a new person or introduce a new person to an enterprise or a situation, and they get imprinted with a level of behavior that is even close to mediocrity, that becomes the standard. That becomes the behavior. And that's what got Starbucks Coffee Company in trouble in those years. Because we started celebrating mediocrity as a behavior, as a result of measuring and rewarding the wrong things and allowing the success and the growth of the company to cover up mistakes. Now let's go back to the proposition of values, humanity, love, and humility. The rules of engagement in building a great company today are very different than they were 10 years ago. The employee that we're trying to attract is not the same employee that he or she was 10 years ago. They have access to so much information, and they are from a generation, and I know I have a son who's 27, a daughter 24, who are a little bit more cynical than we were. You relate to that? People today want to work for a company that not only they believe in, but they want to go home at night and share with their friends and family the pride they have in being part of something larger than themselves. But it's not a part-time job. It's not a part-time job. We have to imprint a set of values and a conscience in what we do. Speaking about Starbucks through the lens of an American company, we're in a situation today in the U.S. where we have $17 trillion in debt, 14 million people unemployed, and 42 out of 50 states in a budget deficit. And we're beginning to see firsthand the cuts in social services across the country as a result of the government no longer having the revenue base to cover the burden they did 10 years ago. And what it means for me is that the responsibility and the rules of engagement for a for-profit company are much different today than they were 10 years ago. And what that means is that we want to attract and retain great people by demonstrating to them that we are the kind of company that not only is in business to make a profit, but to take care of our people and the communities we serve. This whole concept of CSR, which has become an acronym across the world, it bothers me a little bit. It bothers me because what I see is many companies using CSR as a mechanism for marketing. CSR is not marketing. CSR is a lifelong commitment to doing the right thing for the people who are being left behind, because the rules of engagement for a for-profit company today have to be more significant than just making money. Now, I've been criticized in the U.S. for saying the following things, and that is, when I look at the three constituencies that we have as a company, our shareholders, our customers, and our people, I have inverted the pyramid for years. I want to exceed the expectations of our people so they can exceed the expectations of our customers, and as a result of that, we will create significant long-term value for our shareholders. Now, we've just had 2 record years for Starbucks. Record revenue, record profit, record stock price. It's not because we're focused every single day on making money. It's because we're focused every single day on the customer experience. And that customer experience comes to life quintessentially in our stores. Not through marketing, not through PR, not through CSR, but by doing everything we can to make our people proud of the company we are and being part of an organization in which people are connected by like-minded values. A year ago, no, 2 years ago, when we were coming out of the transformation, I told a story to a large audience, and that was at the height of the recession, when we were really facing significant headwinds and did not know whether or not we could make it through. I got a call from an institutional shareholder who I've known for years. And he said, "Howard, this is the perfect time. No one will criticize you. You have all the cover in the world to cut the health care benefit at Starbucks." Now that benefit costs Starbucks every single year approximately $250 million. That's an expense. And I said to the shareholder, "You don't understand. The business that we are in, as great as the coffee is, and we are sourcing and roasting and blending the highest quality Arabica coffee in the world, is subordinate to the culture, the values, and the guiding principles of Starbucks. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find any consumer brand in the world that is as dependent as we are on human behavior. We'll do $15 billion in revenue this year, and our average sale is $5. $5. And that $5 is dependent on our people showing up every day, believing in the enterprise, believing in the culture. If we would have cut the healthcare benefit, we would have fractured the trust and reservoir that existed around the country. I told the shareholder with great respect, if you believe that we should cut the healthcare benefit and we're not going to do it, then respectfully, you should probably sell your stock. Because we're not doing it. And I would submit, if I did do that, as easy and compelling as it might have been to save $250 million, which we needed, Starbucks Coffee Company would not be in Indonesia today. We would not have been. And the problem, I think, across the world, in all businesses, in all enterprises, is the short-term mentality that people have as a result of the external pressures that they have on them. I'd say the following. First off, business is a team sport. A team sport. However, last year, and the years that preceded, of all the sports teams in the world, in every geography, in every sport, that won the championship last year, only 11% of them will repeat. 89% of the championship teams in every sport, in every geography around the world, will not win a championship in consecutive years. Why? Did the team change? No. Better team than they were? No. Selfishness, egotistical behavior, infighting, lack of desire, lack of hunger, entitlement, hubris, all the things that got Starbucks in trouble 5 years ago when we were winning. Success, ladies and gentlemen, is not an entitlement. It has to be earned. And it has to be earned every single day. And it's not, as I said before, what we are doing. It's why we're doing it. Our aspiration as a company is to build a great, enduring enterprise that demonstrates to the world not that we're better than anyone else, but you can build long-term value for the shareholder and make a profit by demonstrating a significant commitment to the people who do the work, by demonstrating that profit as a singular goal is pretty shallow and success should be shared, and we all have a greater responsibility than one single constituent. And we have to find the fragile balance between profitability and benevolence in the work that we do. I would also say that customers around the world are making buying decisions on products, services, not only on what things cost or how convenient they are, but they're making buying decisions, and there's hard statistical evidence of this, on what the company stands for, how they're taking care of their people, whether or not they are authentically giving back to the community, and most of all, if their values can stand the test of time, because it's genuine, it's authentic, and it's built through the lens of humanity. Thank you very much.